The space around Kepler 442 burned with the light of dying ships. Admiral Zexathara watched from the bridge of her command vessel as another coalition cruiser exploded in a ball of fire and metal. The Vorthan Empire was winning, and everyone knew it. "Admiral, we have lost the Centauri battle group," reported her tactical officer. His voice shook with fear. "The Epsilon Union ships are falling back. We cannot hold this position much longer." Zexathara looked at the main screen. Red dots showed Vorthan ships. Blue dots showed her own forces. There were 5 red dots for every blue one. The math was simple and cruel. They were going to lose. The Vorthan Empire had been crushing everything in their path for 6 months. 17 star systems had fallen to their massive fleets. Their ships were huge, dark things that looked like metal mountains floating in space. Each one carried enough firepower to destroy a small moon. "Send another distress call," Zexathara ordered. "All frequencies. Someone has to hear us." Her communications officer worked at his station. "Broadcasting on all channels, Admiral. But who is left to help us? The Vorthons have beaten everyone who tried to stop them." Zexathara knew he was right. The 12 species of the Galactic Council had pooled their fleets to stop the Vorthon advance. It had not been enough. The enemy was too strong, too organized, too ruthless. A new explosion lit up the darkness. Another ship died. Another crew of brave aliens lost their lives trying to protect the innocent people on Haven Prime. The colony world hung behind them like a blue and green jewel. 3 million beings lived on that planet. Farmers, teachers, children, all waiting to die when the Vorthans finished with the fleet. Far away, in a different part of space, Captain Jake Morrison sat in his command chair aboard the UES Defiance. The human warship was running silent, all systems on low power. They were supposed to be testing new equipment, not talking to anyone. "Captain, I am picking up something strange," said Lieutenant Commander Ryan Blake from the science station. "It sounds like a distress call, but it is very faint." Morrison was a tall man with gray hair and serious eyes. He had fought in 3 wars before joining the space service. "Put it on speakers, Ryan." The bridge filled with the sound of alien voices speaking in panic. The universal translator worked hard to make sense of different languages mixed together. Words like help, dying, and lost came through clearly. "Sir, those are coalition forces," said Commander Elena Vasquez, his first officer. She was a small woman with dark hair and quick eyes. "They are under attack in the Kepler system." Morrison stared at the main screen. Their orders were clear. Stay hidden. Test the new systems. Do not contact anyone. Earth Command did not want other species to know about their newest ship yet. "How far to Kepler 442? He asked. 3 hours at maximum speed, answered Lieutenant Commander Lisa Grant from the navigation station. Morrison thought about the voices on the radio. Alien voices, yes, but still people calling for help. Still beings who would die if no one came. "Chief Rodriguez," he called to the engineering section. "How are our new systems working?" The voice of Chief Engineer Matt Rodriguez came through the speakers. "All green, Captain. The quantum drives are running smooth. New weapons are online. We are ready for anything." Morrison made his choice. "Set course for Kepler 442. Maximum speed." Elena looked surprised. "Sir, our orders." "I heard our orders," Morrison said. "I also heard people dying. We are going to help them." The Defiance turned in space and jumped to faster than light speed. Behind them, Earth grew smaller and disappeared. Ahead lay a battle that would change everything. Back in the Kepler system, things were getting worse. Admiral Zexathara watched as the Vorthan flagship moved into position. The massive ship was called Oblivion's Edge. It was 3 times larger than her own command vessel and carried planet-killing weapons. "Admiral, they are charging their main cannon," reported her weapons officer. "Target appears to be Haven Prime." Zexathara felt sick. The Vorthans were not just going to win the battle. They were going to destroy the planet and everyone on it. Men, women, children, all gone in a flash of light. "All ships, concentrate fire on the Oblivion's Edge," she ordered. "We have to stop them from firing." Her remaining ships turned their weapons on the enemy flagship. Energy beams and missiles struck its massive shields. The attacks did nothing. The Vorthan ship was too big, too strong. "Incoming message from the Vorthan commander," said her communications officer. "Put it through." The main screen changed to show a Vorthan general. His species looked like giant lizards with too many teeth. "Admiral Zexthara," he said in a voice like grinding metal. "You have fought well, but this ends now. Surrender and we will kill you quickly. Resist and we will make Haven Prime burn for days." Zexthara stood up straight. "We will never surrender to you." The Vorthan general smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. "Then watch your precious world die." The connection ended. On the main screen, the Oblivion's edge began to glow as its main weapon charged up. In 10 minutes, maybe less, Haven Prime would be nothing but dust and radiation. "All ships ramming speed," Zexthara ordered. "If we are going to die, we take as many of them with us as possible." Her fleet began its final charge. Small ships against giants. Desperation against overwhelming force. It was brave and stupid, and hopeless all at the same time. Then something impossible happened. "Admiral," called her sensor officer. "New contact dropping out of hyperspace. Unknown design. It is small." Zexthara looked at her screens. A single ship had appeared at the edge of the battle. It was tiny compared to the Vorthan vessels. Sleek and white, like a knife made of starlight. "Who are they?" she asked. "Unknown, Admiral. They are broadcasting on an old frequency. The message says The communications officer paused, checking his equipment. "The message says they are human." Zexthara had heard of humans, a young species from a small world called Earth. They had made contact with the galaxy only 2 years ago. Most people thought they were primitive and weak. "One ship?" she asked. "They sent one ship?" The human vessel moved toward the battle at incredible speed. It was faster than anything Zexthara had ever seen. But what could one small ship do against the Vorthan Empire? She was about to find out. The UES Defiance dropped out of hyperspace like a white arrow shot from a bow. Captain Jake Morrison looked at the battle on his main screen and felt his heart sink. The situation was worse than the distress calls had made it sound. "My God," whispered Commander Elena Vasquez. "Look at the size of those ships." The Vorthan vessels were massive beyond belief, dark metal hulks that blocked out the stars. Each one was the size of a small city, bristling with weapons and armor. Against them, the coalition ships looked like children's toys. "Captain, I count 47 Vorthan vessels," reported Lieutenant Commander Lisa Grant. "Coalition forces are down to 12 ships, and most of those are damaged." Morrison watched as a coalition cruiser tried to run from 3 Vorthan destroyers. Energy beams reached out across space and tore the smaller ship apart. No escape pods. No survivors. "Sir, we are receiving a transmission from the coalition flagship," said communications specialist Amy Foster. She was young, maybe 25, with bright red hair and a nervous voice. "Put it through, Amy." The main screen changed to show an alien woman with blue skin and large golden eyes. She wore a military uniform covered in medals and decorations. Behind her, Morrison could see smoke and sparks on her bridge. "Unknown vessel," the alien said. "This is Admiral Zexthara of the Galactic Coalition. You must leave this system immediately. The Vorthans will destroy you." Morrison stood up. "Admiral, this is Captain Jake Morrison of the Earth vessel Defiance. We received your distress call. We are here to help." Zexthara looked confused. "Earth? You mean the human homeworld?" "Captain, you do not understand. This is not some small conflict. The Vorthan Empire has conquered 17 systems. They have 1,000 ships. You have one. Sometimes one is enough." Morrison said quietly. Before Zexthara could answer, another voice broke into the transmission. This one was cold and harsh, like metal scraping against stone. "How interesting," the new voice said. "Humans. I have heard stories about your species. Weak, primitive, no real military to speak of." The screen split to show a second alien. This one was clearly Vorthan. He looked like a giant lizard wearing black armor. Scars covered his face and his eyes glowed red in the darkness. "I am General Kravex," the Vorthan continued, "commander of the Oblivion's Edge. Little human, you should have stayed in your tiny corner of space. Now you will die with the rest of these fools." Morrison met the alien's gaze without fear. "General, I have a different idea. How about you pack up your fleet and leave this system? That way nobody has to die today." Kravex laughed. It sounded like breaking glass. One tiny ship thinks it can threaten the Vorthan Empire. This will be amusing." The transmission ended. Morrison turned to his crew. Every face on the bridge showed the same expression. They were scared, but they were ready. "Elena, what do our sensors tell us about those big ships?" Morrison asked. Commander Vasquez worked at her station. "Heavy armor, massive energy shields, lots of weapons, but Captain, they are also slow and clumsy. Built for straight-up fights, not fancy flying." "Ryan, what about their formations?" Lieutenant Commander Blake studied his screens. "Very predictable. Sir, they stay in tight groups, always keeping the biggest ships in the center. Classic defensive pattern." Morrison smiled. It was not a nice smile. "Matt, how are our new toys working?" Chief Engineer Rodriguez's voice came from the engine room. "Quantum drives are perfect, Captain. New armor is holding strong. And sir, those experimental weapons you wanted? They are ready to party." Morrison looked around his bridge. His crew was young, most of them under 30. They had never fought in a real war. But they were human, and humans had been fighting impossible battles for thousands of years. "Amy, open a channel to all Coalition ships," he ordered. "Channel, open, sir." "Coalition forces, this is Captain Morrison. I need you to fall back to the asteroid field and wait for my signal. When I give the word, hit the Vorthans with everything you have. Do not worry about us. Just focus on those big ships." Admiral Zexathara's voice came through the speakers. "Captain Morrison, what are you planning? You cannot fight 47 ships by yourself." "Who says I am going to fight them?" Morrison replied. "Lisa, take us in. Full speed. Random evasive. Pattern. Let's see what these lizards can do." The Defiance shot forward like a rocket. It was fast, much faster than the Vorthan ships. Morrison watched the enemy fleet react to their approach. The big ships turned slowly, trying to bring their weapons to bear. "Incoming fire," reported Lisa. "Multiple energy beams and missiles. Show me what human engineering can do," Morrison said calmly. The Defiance danced between the enemy attacks. It rolled and spun and twisted through space like a leaf in a hurricane. Vorthan weapons fired again and again, but they could not hit the small, fast human ship. On the Coalition flagship, Admiral Zexathara watched in amazement. "How are they moving like that? No ship can turn that quickly." Her tactical officer was equally stunned. "Admiral, their acceleration patterns are impossible. They should be crushed by their own movement." But the humans were not crushed. They flew through the Vorthan formation like they were dancing. Energy beams that should have destroyed them passed harmlessly by. Missiles that should have caught them exploded in empty space. "Sir, we are inside their defensive perimeter," reported Lisa. "What now?" Morrison looked at the massive Vorthan ships around them. Up close, they were even more frightening. Huge metal monsters with guns the size of buildings, but Morrison was not afraid. He was thinking, "Ryan, scan those ships. Find me something interesting." "Yes, sir. Captain, their shields are designed to stop big attacks from far away. They are not set up for close-range precision strikes." "Matt, what about those new quantum torpedoes?" "Ready to fire, Captain. But sir, we only have 12 of them." Morrison studied the enemy formation. 47 ships, 12 torpedoes. The math did not look good, but math was not everything. "Amy, send a message to the Coalition fleet. Tell them to get ready. In 60 seconds we are going to give these Vorthans a surprise they will never forget." The Defiance continued its impossible dance through the enemy fleet. Vorthan gunners fired desperately, but they could not touch the human ship. It was too small, too fast. too unpredictable. General Kravex watched from his flagship with growing anger. How is one tiny ship making fools of my entire fleet? Destroy it. Destroy it now. But his ships could not destroy what they could not hit. The humans flew like nothing the Vorthons had ever seen. Like they were born in the vacuum of space itself. Morrison looked at his crew. Young faces, scared but determined. All right, people. Time to show the galaxy what humans can do. Lisa, bring us around for an attack run. Ryan, lock onto their command ship. Matt, prepare quantum torpedoes. The Defiance turned toward the Oblivion's edge. The massive Vorthon flagship looked like a metal mountain against the stars. Its weapons were already turning toward them. Sir, Elena said quietly, that thing has enough firepower to crack a planet. Are you sure about this? Morrison sat back in his command chair. Elena, there are 3 million people on that world behind us. Men, women, children. They are counting on us to protect them. I do not care how big that ship is, we are going to stop it. The Defiance accelerated toward the enemy flagship. Behind them, the Coalition fleet held its breath. Ahead of them, the Vorthon Empire waited with guns ready. The real battle was about to begin. The Defiance raced toward the Oblivion's edge like a white comet against the darkness. Captain Morrison watched the massive Vorthon flagship grow larger on his screen. Its weapons were turning to track his ship, but they moved slowly, designed for battles between giants, not for hunting something as small and fast as his vessel. 15 seconds to weapons range, reported Lieutenant Commander Lisa Grant. Her hands moved over the controls with perfect precision, keeping the ship dancing between enemy fire. Ryan, tell me you found something useful, Morrison said. Lieutenant. Commander Blake worked frantically at his science station. Captain, their main shields are incredibly strong, but they have weak spots. The shield generators are spread around the ship's hull. If we can hit 3 or 4 of them at exactly the same time, their shields will collapse, Morrison finished. Matt, can you program the quantum torpedoes for simultaneous impact? Chief Engineer Rodriguez's voice came through the speakers. Already working on it, Captain. Give me 30 more seconds. The Defiance rolled hard to port as a massive energy beam cut through the space where they had been. The blast was so powerful it lit up the entire area like artificial lightning. If it had hit them, nothing would have remained but atoms. Amy, send a message to the Coalition fleet, Morrison ordered. Tell them to watch and learn. They are about to see something new. Communications Specialist Amy Foster nodded nervously. Message sent, Captain. On the Coalition flagship, Admiral Zexathara watched the small human ship dodge between attacks that should have vaporized it instantly. Her tactical officer was recording everything, trying to understand how the humans moved their ship in ways that seemed to break the laws of physics. Admiral, their acceleration patterns make no sense, he reported. They should be experiencing forces that would kill any organic crew. Maybe humans are tougher than we thought, Zexathara replied, but her voice showed her doubt. The truth was simpler and more amazing. Human ships were not just faster or stronger than alien vessels. They were built with a completely different philosophy. Where other species designed their ships to be mobile fortresses, humans built theirs to be extensions of the pilot's will. Every system was designed for maximum response, maximum flexibility. Torpedoes ready, Captain, Rodriguez reported. Morrison studied the enemy flagship. It was enormous, covered in weapons and armor. But size was not everything. Sometimes the biggest target was the easiest to hit. Fire, he said quietly. 4 quantum torpedoes shot out from the Defiance. They were small, no bigger than a person, but each one carried enough concentrated energy to punch through a moon. More importantly, they were smart. Ryan had programmed them to hit their targets at exactly the same microsecond. The torpedoes split up, each one heading for a different shield generator. The Vorthon gunners saw them coming and tried to shoot them down, but the weapons were too small and too fast. They slipped through the defensive fire like silver fish swimming upstream. 4 explosions bloomed on the hull of the Oblivion's edge. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the massive ship's shields flickered and died. Impossible, whispered General Kravex from his command bridge. Our shields are the strongest in the galaxy. How did one small ship? He never finished the sentence. Morrison was already giving his next order. Amy, signal the coalition fleet. Tell them to hit that flagship now. Everything they have. Signal sent, Captain. Admiral Zexathera did not hesitate. All ships, concentrate fire on the Oblivion's edge. Their shields are down. This is our chance. The remaining coalition vessels opened fire with everything they had. Energy beams, missiles, plasma cannons, and particle accelerators all struck the Vorthon flagship at once. Without its shields, the massive ship was suddenly vulnerable. But Morrison was not finished. While the coalition fleet hammered the enemy flagship, he turned his attention to the rest of the Vorthon formation. Lisa, take us to the next target, that big cruiser on the left. Aye, Captain. The Defiance shot across the battlefield toward another Vorthon ship. This one was smaller than the flagship but still huge by human standards. Its captain saw them coming and tried to turn his vessel to bring its main guns to bear. He might as well have tried to swat a hummingbird with a sledgehammer. Ryan, what do you see? Same weakness pattern, Captain. Shield generators around the hull, weapons designed for long-range combat. Sir, I think all their ships have the same basic design. Morrison smiled. That is what I was hoping to hear. Amy, broadcast to all coalition ships. Tell them what we learned about Vorthon shield generators. Share our targeting data. Within minutes, the entire coalition fleet was using human tactics. Small, fast ships moved in close to strike at shield generators. Larger vessels provided covering fire and finished off targets once their defenses were down. The Vorthons had never faced anything like it. For hundreds of years, they had fought enemies who used the same basic strategies they did. Big ships, shooting at other big ships from long range. Whoever had the most firepower usually won. But humans did not fight that way. They used speed instead of armor, precision instead of brute force, and teamwork instead of individual glory. Sir, the Vorthons are trying to regroup, reported Elena. They are pulling their ships into a tight defensive circle. Morrison looked at the enemy formation. It was a classic move, designed to provide mutual support and overlapping fire. Against most enemies, it would have been smart. Against humans, it was exactly the wrong thing to do. Ryan, launch a spread of scanner drones. I want to know everything about that formation. Lisa, plot a course through the middle of their circle. Matt, prepare the experimental shield modulator. Captain, Elena said carefully, flying through the middle of their formation would put us in the crossfire of every gun they have. That is exactly where I want to be, Morrison replied. The Defiance launched a dozen small drones that scattered in all directions. Each one was no bigger than a basketball, but they carried advanced sensors that could map every detail of the enemy ships. Drones are sending data now, Ryan reported. Captain, you are not going to believe this. Their defensive formation has a major flaw. All their ships are pointed outward, but they have almost no coverage for the center of the circle. They never expected anyone to be crazy enough to fly into the middle of their formation, Elena realized. Crazy is what humans do best, Morrison said. Matt, is that shield modulator ready? Aye, Captain, but sir, we have never tested it in actual combat. It could fail. Or it could save us all. Lisa, take us in. Maximum speed, straight down the middle. The Defiance shot toward the Vorthon. Formation like a bullet fired from a gun. The enemy ship saw them coming and opened fire, but their own vessels were in the way. They could not risk hitting each other with their massive weapons. Activating shield modulator, Rodriguez announced. The Defiance seemed to shimmer and become transparent. Vorthon energy beams passed right through it without causing any damage. The experimental device worked by shifting the ship slightly out of normal space, making it nearly impossible to hit with conventional weapons. We are inside their formation, Lisa reported. All enemy ships within close range. Morrison looked around at the Vorthon vessels surrounding them. From the inside, they looked even more massive and threatening. But they also looked confused and helpless. Launch all remaining quantum torpedoes, 1 per ship. Target their engines. 12 torpedoes. shot out from the Defiance in all directions. Each one found its target and exploded with devastating effect. 12 Vorthan ships suddenly found themselves without power, drifting helplessly in space. Amy, signal the Coalition fleet. Tell them to finish off the disabled ships. We are going after the rest. What followed was unlike any space battle in OR galactic history. The humans had turned warfare into an art form. They moved like ghosts through the enemy fleet, striking where the Vorthans were weakest, disappearing before retaliation could arrive. Other Coalition ships tried to copy human tactics, with varying degrees of success. The Centauri were too proud to change their traditional methods. The Epsilon Union adapted quickly, using their natural intelligence to understand human strategies. But it was the humans who led the way, showing the galaxy that there was more than one way to fight a war. General Kravex watched his fleet being torn apart by tactics he did not understand. Ships that had conquered star systems were being outmaneuvered by vessels a fraction of their size. How are they doing this? He roared at his tactical officer. How are they making our ships look like helpless children? Sir, they do not fight, like anyone else. They use speed and precision instead of power. They strike at our weaknesses instead of testing our strengths. Kravex slammed his fist on his command console. Then we will show them the power of the Vorthan Empire. Activate the spatial disruptor. Deep in the bowels of the Oblivion's edge, ancient machinery began to hum with terrible energy. The Vorthans were about to deploy their most feared weapon, something that could tear holes in space itself. The battle was about to become much more dangerous. The space around Kepler 442 had become a graveyard of burning ships. Half the Vorthan fleet was disabled or destroyed, their massive hulks drifting like dead whales in the cosmic ocean. The Coalition forces, inspired by human tactics, pressed their advantage with new confidence. Captain Morrison watched the battle from his command chair, feeling cautiously optimistic for the first time since arriving. His crew had performed beyond all expectations, and the impossible was starting to look possible. Then everything changed. Captain, Lieutenant Commander Ryan Blake called from his science station, his voice tight with concern. I am detecting massive energy buildup from the Oblivion's edge. Something big is powering up inside that ship. Morrison looked at the enemy flagship on his main screen. The huge vessel was wounded but not dead. Scorch marks covered its hull where Coalition weapons had found their mark, but it was still fighting. What kind of energy buildup? Morrison asked. Unknown, sir. The readings are unlike anything in our databases. Captain, whatever they are doing, it is pulling power from their entire ship. Life support, weapons, engines, everything is being diverted to this one system. Commander Elena Vasquez studied her tactical display. Sir, if they are pulling power from their weapons, this might be our chance to finish them off. Morrison shook his head. No. If they are willing to make themselves defenseless, whatever they are building up to must be worse than anything we have thrown at them so far. On the Oblivion's edge, General Kravex stood before a massive control panel that had not been used in decades. The spatial disruptor was the Vorthan Empire's ultimate weapon, capable of tearing holes in the fabric of space itself. It was also incredibly dangerous to use. Sir, the weapon will be ready in 5 minutes, reported his chief engineer. But General, the power requirements are enormous. We will have to shut down all other systems. Do it, Kravex snarled. These humans think they are clever with their dancing and dodging. Let us see how well they dance when space itself is their enemy. Back on the Defiance, Amy Foster looked up from her communications station with fear in her eyes. Captain, I am picking up transmissions from the enemy flagship. They are broadcasting on frequencies I have never seen before. Sir, I think they are trying to contact something. Contact what? Morrison asked. I do not know, sir. The signals are not directed at any ship or planet. They are being sent into empty space. Ryan's instruments began screaming warnings. Captain, massive spatial distortion detected. Something is happening to space itself around the enemy flagship. Morrison felt a chill run down his spine. He had fought in many battles, but this was something new and terrifying. All ships, this is Captain Morrison. Pull back from the Oblivion's edge immediately. Whatever they are doing, we do not want to be close when it happens. The Coalition. Fleet began to retreat, but it might already be too late. Space around the Vorthan flagship began to ripple and twist like water disturbed by a stone. Stars visible beyond the ship started to stretch and distort. "My God," whispered Lisa Grant. "They are tearing holes in space." Admiral Zexithara's voice came through the communication system filled with horror. "Captain Morrison, our scientists are detecting massive gravitational distortions. If that weapon fires, it could destroy this entire star system." Morrison realized the terrible truth. The Vorthans were not just trying to win the battle. They were willing to destroy everything, including themselves, rather than accept defeat. The spatial disruptor would tear apart space itself, creating a chain reaction that would consume planets, stars, and everything else in the system. 3 million people on Haven Prime, thousands of Coalition crew members, even the Vorthans themselves. All of them would die if that weapon fired. "Ryan, tell me you have some ideas," Morrison said urgently. "Working on it, Captain. The spatial disruptor works by creating artificial gravity wells that collapse into each other. In theory, if we could create an opposing gravity field at exactly the right moment—" "In theory, sir. We would need to detonate something with enormous gravitational force right next to their weapon. The only thing we have that might work is our quantum drive core." Elena looked horrified. "Ryan, you are talking about turning our entire ship into a bomb that would kill us all." "Maybe," Ryan admitted. "Or maybe the explosion would create a controlled singularity that would neutralize their weapon without destroying the system." Morrison looked around his bridge. His crew was young, most of them barely out of the academy. They had families back on Earth, friends, dreams for the future. He was asking them to give up everything for people they had never met. "Captain," said Chief Engineer Rodriguez from the engine room, "I have been listening to the conversation. Sir, I think Ryan is right. If we can get close enough to their weapon and overload our quantum drive at exactly the right moment, we might be able to stop them." "Might?" Morrison asked. "Sir, I would say 50-50 odds, maybe a little better if we are very lucky." Morrison thought about the 3 million people on Haven Prime, families sitting down to dinner, children playing in parks, teachers reading stories to their students, all of them trusting that someone somewhere would protect them from the darkness. "Amy, open a channel to all Coalition ships," he said quietly. "Channel open, sir." "Coalition forces, this is Captain Morrison. The Vorthans are preparing to deploy a weapon that will destroy this entire system. We are going to stop them, but we need your help. When we make our run on the enemy flagship, focus all your fire on their remaining escorts. Keep them off our backs." Admiral Zexithara's voice came through the speakers. "Captain, what are you planning?" Morrison looked at his crew one more time. Elena with her quick mind and steady hands. Lisa with her perfect piloting skills. Ryan with his brilliant scientific brain. Amy with her nervous smile and kind heart. Matt Rodriguez, who could make machines sing with his engineering magic. "We are going to ram their weapon with our quantum drive core," he said simply. The silence on the bridge was complete. Everyone understood what that meant. The Defiance would be destroyed. They would all die. "Sir," Elena said quietly, "there has to be another way." "Maybe there is," Morrison replied, "but we do not have time to find it. That weapon will fire in 3 minutes. If we do not stop it now, everyone in this system dies anyway." He looked around the bridge again. "This is not an order. This is a choice. Anyone who wants to evacuate to the Coalition ships can do so now. Amy, prepare the escape pods." Nobody moved. "Captain," Lisa said, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes, "where do you want me to take us?" Morrison felt a surge of pride so strong it almost brought tears to his eyes. These young people far from home and facing certain death were choosing to stay. They were choosing to fight. "Plot a course for the Oblivion's Edge," he ordered. "Maximum speed. Elena, transfer all power from weapons and life support to engines and shields. Ryan, prepare the quantum drive for overload. Matt, I need you to time the explosion perfectly." "Understood, Captain," came the replies from around the bridge. The Defiance turned toward the enemy flagship and accelerated. Behind them, the Coalition fleet opened fire on the remaining Vorthan escorts, keeping them busy while the human ship made its final run. 2 minutes to spatial disruptor firing, Ryan reported. Captain, space distortion is increasing rapidly. If they fire that thing, they are not going to fire it, Morrison said with absolute certainty. We are going to stop them. On the Oblivion's edge, General Kravex watched the small human ship approaching and laughed with contempt. The fools are trying to ram us. Do they think their tiny ship can damage our armor? His tactical officer was less confident. Sir, they are moving very fast, and their previous attacks have been unconventional. Let them come, Kravex snarled. In 1 minute, our weapon will fire and this entire system will be torn apart. Nothing can stop us now. But he was wrong. Something could stop them. Something small and fast and determined, crewed by beings who understood that some things were worth dying for. The Defiance raced toward its destiny, carrying with it the hopes of millions and the courage of a species that refused to give up, no matter how impossible the odds. The Defiance shot toward the Oblivion's edge like a comet, carrying the fire of hope itself. Captain Morrison gripped his command chair as space twisted and warped around the enemy flagship. The spatial disruptor was almost ready to fire, and when it did, everything in the star system would die. 30 seconds to weapons range, reported Lieutenant Commander Lisa Grant. Her voice was calm, but her hands shook slightly on the controls. Sir, quantum drive is ready for overload, came Chief Engineer Rodriguez's voice from the engine room. Just give me the word. Morrison watched the enemy ship grow larger on his screen. He could see the massive spatial disruptor weapon charging up, reality itself bending around it like heat waves rising from hot pavement. 20 seconds, Lisa announced. On the Coalition flagship, Admiral Zexathera watched the human ship's approach with a mixture of awe and horror. She had never seen such courage, such willingness to sacrifice everything for strangers. All ships concentrate fire on the Vorthan escorts, she ordered. Give the humans a clear path. Coalition vessels unleashed everything they had at the remaining Vorthan ships, keeping them busy while the Defiance made its desperate run. 10 seconds to impact, Lisa called out. Morrison took a deep breath. Matt, overload the quantum drive, now. Overloading quantum drive, Rodriguez confirmed. Deep in the heart of the Defiance, the ship's most powerful system began to tear itself apart in a controlled explosion. The energy released was beyond imagination, enough to power a small city for 100 years. 5 seconds, Lisa announced. Morrison looked around his bridge one last time. These brave young people had followed him into the jaws of death without hesitation. Whatever happened next, he was proud to have served with them. Impact in 3, 2, 1. The Defiance struck the Oblivion's edge just as its quantum drive exploded. Light brighter than a star filled the space between the two ships. The explosion created a gravity well so intense it warped space around it, pulling at the fabric of reality itself. For a moment, everyone watching thought the human ship had been destroyed. The explosion was so bright it overwhelmed all sensors. Then, something impossible happened. The spatial disruptor, which had been about to tear apart the star system, suddenly shut down. The artificial gravity well created by the Defiance's sacrifice had neutralized the Vorthan weapon, canceling out its terrible power. But more than that, the explosion had created a protective bubble around the human ship. The quantum drive overload, instead of destroying the Defiance, had thrown it into a pocket of twisted space where the normal rules did not apply. Captain, Amy Foster shouted from her communication station. We are still alive. Morrison opened his eyes, not sure when. He had closed them. His ship was intact, floating in a shimmering bubble of distorted space. Through the strange glow, he could see the Oblivion's edge drifting nearby, its weapon systems dead. Damage report, he called out. No damage to report, sir, came Rodriguez's amazed voice. Somehow the quantum explosion created a stable space-time bubble around us. We are completely protected. Lieutenant Commander Ryan Blake worked frantically at his science station. Captain, the spatial disruptor is completely neutralized. The Vorthans cannot fire it again without rebuilding the entire system. On the Oblivion's edge, General Kravex stared in disbelief at his dead weapon controls. Impossible. Nothing could have survived that explosion. Nothing could have stopped our weapon. Sir, his tactical officer reported, the human ship is still there. It is surrounded by some kind of energy field we have never seen before. Kravex looked at the small human vessel floating in its protective bubble and felt something he had not experienced in decades. Fear. These humans had done the impossible, not once, but twice. They had stopped his unstoppable weapon and survived. Their own sacrifice. Sir, what are your orders? His officer asked. Quote. Vex looked around his bridge at his defeated crew. Half his fleet was destroyed or disabled. His ultimate weapon was useless, and somewhere in that glowing bubble, a handful of humans had proven that the Vorthan Empire was not invincible. Signal retreat, he said quietly. All remaining ships, fall back to hyperspace. The surviving Vorthan vessels limped away from the battlefield, their black hulls scarred by human ingenuity and coalition firepower. The mighty empire that had conquered 17 star systems was fleeing from one small ship and a handful of determined beings. The space-time bubble around the Defiance slowly faded as the quantum energies stabilized. Captain Morrison found himself looking out at a battlefield transformed. The immediate threat was over, but he knew this was just the beginning. Amy, open a channel to the Coalition fleet, he ordered. Channel open, Captain. Coalition forces, this is Captain Morrison. The spatial disruptor has been neutralized. The Vorthons are retreating. Haven Prime is safe. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Cheers, congratulations, and thanks, in a dozen different languages flooded the communications channel. Admiral Zexthera's voice cut through the celebration. Captain Morrison, on behalf of the Galactic Coalition, I thank you. Your courage and sacrifice saved millions of lives today. Morrison looked at his crew. They were exhausted, shaken, but alive. Admiral, we could not have done it without your support. Your people fought bravely today. Over the following hours, the aftermath of the battle became clear. The Vorthan Empire, shocked by their defeat, began withdrawing from contested systems. For the first time in months, their advance had been stopped. But more importantly, the galaxy had learned something new about humanity. The species that had been dismissed as primitive and weak had proven themselves in the crucible of combat. They brought new ideas, new tactics, and new hope to a galaxy that had begun to despair. 3 weeks later, Captain Morrison stood in the Great Assembly Hall on the neutral world of Concord Prime. Representatives from 50 different species had gathered to witness something unprecedented in galactic history. Captain Jake Morrison, announced the Speaker of the Assembly, by unanimous vote of the Galactic Council, you are hereby appointed as the first human representative to the Interstellar Defense Committee. The applause was thunderous. Species that had never heard of humanity now stood to honor the courage of one small ship and its crew. Morrison stepped forward to the podium and looked out at the sea of alien faces. Some were familiar now, like Admiral Zexthera, who had become a close friend and ally. Others were completely new, species who had traveled from distant stars to meet the humans who had changed everything. Honored representatives, Morrison began. 3 weeks ago, my ship responded to a distress call from beings we had never met. We did not help them because they were allies. We did not help them because we expected reward. We helped them because it was the right thing to do. He paused, looking around the vast hall. Humanity offers the galaxy something more than new weapons or tactics. We offer the idea that different species, working together, can achieve things that none of us could accomplish alone. The months that followed saw a transformation in galactic defense doctrine. Mixed species crews became common, with humans serving as tactical advisors and flight instructors. The rigid, traditional approaches to warfare gave way to flexible, adaptive strategies. Commander Elena Vasquez found herself teaching alien cadets at the new Interstellar Naval Academy. Lieutenant Commander Ryan Blake led research teams developing new technologies that combined human innovation with alien scientific knowledge. Chief Engineer Rodriguez worked with species across the galaxy, sharing human engineering principles and learning new approaches to faster-than-light travel. The Vorthan Empire, meanwhile, found itself facing a galaxy united as never before. Their advance stopped completely as world after world joined the growing coalition. Some Vorthan commanders, impressed by human tactics, even defected to fight alongside their former enemies. General Kravex himself was captured 6 months later when human-trained pilots outmaneuvered his personal fleet. In custody, he was asked by his interrogators how one small species had defeated the mighty Vorthan Empire. His answer became famous throughout the galaxy. "We fought ships," he said. "They fought for people. We tried to conquer. They tried to protect. We saw enemies. They saw beings worth saving. That is why they won." A year after the Battle of Kepler 442, Captain Morrison returned to the system for the dedication of a new memorial. On Haven Prime, in the capital city's central square, a simple monument had been erected. It bore no heroic statues or grand inscriptions. Just a small plaque with words that would be remembered for generations, in memory of those who chose to stand between the innocent and harm. From the smallest act of kindness to the greatest sacrifice, every choice to help others makes the galaxy brighter. Morrison stood before the memorial with tears in his eyes. Around him, beings from a dozen different species had gathered to remember not just the battle but the idea it represented. The idea that different peoples could work together. That courage was not measured in firepower but in the willingness to risk everything for others. Admiral Zex Thera joined him at the memorial. "Captain, my people have a saying. The star that burns brightest burns alone, but you humans have taught us something new. Sometimes the brightest light comes from many stars working together.